Alright, I'll admit, I was wrong about Monster Hunter World. Why, you may ask? Well, when it first released about 6 years ago, my good friend at the time was begging me to buy it and play it with him. And after his incessant nagging, I finally gave in, and well, you can probably tell where this is going. I thought the combat was abysmally slow, I hated that there was no health bar for the monsters, and I hated the over-the-top story. And as with anything you don't put something into, I hated it. We maybe played for like 2 hours, and then after that I never touched it again. But now recently, with the announcement of Monster Hunter Wilds and a bunch of other factors like the game being dirt cheap, Monster Hunter World has had an insane resurgence with new and returning players, so I decided, you know what, let's pick it up on Steam and give it a real chance this time. And yep, I was wrong. Monster Hunter World, without a doubt, slaps. I'm about to hit around 50 hours of game time. I've been trying my best to take in everything that the game has to offer, and I'm just getting started in the Iceborne DLC. And let me clarify before we dive in, I'm not some insane, chatted up Monster Hunter player now. I still haven't forced myself to learn all the game's smaller mechanics, and most of the time I play like straight garbage, but I've been going at my own pace, and I figured once I beat the main story and the DLC story, that's when I'll get into the game's nitty-gritty. I know this game is massive, and I'm still only on the tip of the iceberg currently. But anyway, let's dive into the new world of Monster Hunter. One thing I gotta get out of the way really quickly is that the story here is, you're not playing this game for the story, let's be honest. The story is just over the top, and you could say it has its moments for sure. Sometimes it's so over the top that I can actually enjoy it, but all it took was one step into the ancient forest and beginning my first real quest, and after that, I was in it. It was so satisfying hunting and killing that first monster. All of my negative feelings practically flew away after that. The gameplay is so good in Monster Hunter that the story could be literally 10 times worse than it is, and I still wouldn't care. The gameplay is what makes Monster Hunter World so special. To start things off, the game lets you customize your character in Palico, which is basically your cat companion. I always appreciate when I can create a character, and the character creator definitely gets the job done. Bonus points too for being able to customize my Palico into my actual real life cat. But after a long slog of cutscenes, you finally make it into the main hub, and I actually really like Astera. It's an enjoyable place to hang out in when you're signing up for all your quests. When you first get here though, you have to choose your weapon, and if you don't know, the weapons are basically the game's class system. I would say that it was a little overwhelming with the amount of options, but I immediately knew I wanted to use the greatsword. It was a pretty easy choice for me. Every weapon has its own play style, and I really appreciate how easy it is to freely switch between them, and how there are so many options to fit every player's preference. But whenever I could choose a big sword, I'm gonna choose the big sword. I didn't mess around a bunch with the other weapons, so when I talked about the gameplay, it's mainly going to be from the perspective of using the greatsword. However, I'm sure the other weapons feel just as good, and I'm excited to try them out the more I play. So after I chose my greatsword and wandered around Astera for a little bit, I went out into the game's first big map, the Ancient Forest. And after this point, Monster Hunter started to really click with me. Right away, I was pretty shocked at how beautiful the environments can look in this game. I really like the design of the Ancient Forest, and even every area afterwards is just as enjoyable and interesting to look at. I really like the variety of each map. My favorite was definitely the Coral Highlands. And if I can give the story some credit, it's how the game introduces each area and the monsters that inhabit these places. Your first few quests start out with you hunting some little baby monsters, nothing too crazy, but your first big monster is the Great Jadras. I'm gonna butcher the names in this video. Once you get to this point in the game though, the dopamine cycle really reels you in. The satisfaction you get hunting down each monster, following their tracks and slaying them just feels It's kind of hard to talk about the game's monsters without diving into the combat though, so let's dive into the combat first, because the combat, goddamn, Monster Hunter feels so good to play. As I said earlier, my complaint 6 years ago was that the combat felt way too slow, and it's kind of funny because I've been using probably the slowest weapon in the game and I've been loving it. The greatsword is slow, but oh my god, is it impactful when you land a hit on a monster. And if you can land multiple hits, oh baby. I think what really helps make the combat even more satisfying is how the monsters react to being hit. It feels like you're actually hitting them, and on top of that, you're able to see the visual damage from your attacks on the monsters. You can even cut off some of the monsters' limbs, like their tails and shit. I must have been really clueless back in the day, because who needs health bars when you can see your progress through the monster's behavior? Like if a monster's limping away and it's all torn up, you know you're getting close to the finish line. There's also a bunch of other mechanics that will help you with your hunt. For example, you can set up shot traps to stun monsters, or you can blind them with flash bombs. If you wanted to, you could literally climb them and send them flying into a wall, knocking them on their side, leaving you with a huge opening for attacks. And that's not even scratching the surface on what you can do in this game. There are so many tools that you can use that it would take more than 10 minutes just trying to talk about all of them. However, one I found really useful was the different mantles that you can use. The base one you get is for camouflage purposes, but later you can get other ones that increase your defenses or give you elemental resistances. I found using the mantle very helpful, and that's just one of the many tools you can use. There's probably a bunch that I'm not even aware of if I'm being straight up. Alright, I think it's time we talk monsters, baby. There are tons of different monsters you can hunt, and they're all vastly different from one another, whether it's their behavior or weaknesses or just their overall design. One thing I really enjoyed about the monster progression was they all start out, you know, pretty tame, like a big lizard, a weird looking fish. And then by the end of the game, you're fighting this insane elder dragon that looks like he's straight up from outer space. Like I said, most of the monsters will have vastly different behaviors. And when you're fighting these monsters, even the weak early game fights, you cannot get too cocky. That was probably my biggest issue when it came to the combat. I'm just too damn greedy in this game. Once I start bonking monsters on the head, I don't want to stop, so I'll either get knocked on my ass or I'll commit to an attack animation, make a fool out of myself because my hit lands like 20 feet away from the monster, and then I get knocked on my ass. Monster Hunter can be punishing, and I love it. You think I'd learn to not be greedy, especially being a big FromSoft fanboy, but here I am. The fights will progressively get more and more challenging as you play through the main quest, and it feels like a good pace of progressional difficulty. But with having a game being all about hunting monsters, this game really delivers on monster variety and monster design. And it just keeps delivering the more I progress through the Iceborne DLC, which I don't want to talk too much about the DLC because I haven't completed it yet, but I will say it's way bigger than I was expecting. It's a straight up expansion with a new hub area and a bunch of new environments and monsters to hunt. I also like that it's snowy. I know it's a small detail, but it really adds some freshness into the gameplay loop. I think for the base game and the DLC, I got it all for like 20 bucks, which for the amount of game time I've gotten out of it so far and all the game time I have left, it was 100% a steal. But anyway, the gameplay really blew away all those preconceived notions I had of the game from 6 years ago, and it's embarrassing how wrong I was about Monster Hunter World. The cycle of tracking and hunting really fires up my dopamine receptors, but you know what gives me even more dopamine? Loot, baby, loot. What really surprised me the most with Monster Hunter was the loot and the loot chase. I didn't really know what to expect when it came to the loot. I figured there would be some incentive to hunt monsters, but I didn't expect it to be so damn rewarding. There's so much loot for you to craft. There's endless weapons with different elemental types, endless upgrades, and so many armor sets too, all of which look super badass, by the way. And to craft anything, you're going to need monster parts, which shockingly comes from monsters. So this adds even more to the gameplay loop where you're constantly being rewarded for going back and hunting previous monsters. I will say I am a little upset at myself because my entire playthrough I used the Guardian armor set, which came from the DLC, and I kind of regret using it. I used it through the entire main quest, and because of the high stats, I didn't really have any incentive to grind out any other armor sets. However, I still grinded out weapons that I wanted to use, and now that I'm in the DLC where my stats are falling off, I've been finally grinding out armor that I want to use. There's just so much here when it comes to the loot, and I always found myself looking at the new weapon and armor sets whenever I would slay a new monster. And on top of all that, there's a bunch of other smaller upgrades and mechanics that you can grind out. For example, you can upgrade certain aspects of the game hub, like adding more food to the canteen, which, by the way, is one of my favorite aspects of the game. Not only do you get to see some cute ass cats make some insane food, but you'll also get some stat buffs depending on what you ordered. There's so much to grind in this game, and so far none of it has felt tedious or exhausting. I've been really loving Monster Hunter World though. The gameplay loop is so unique and special. It's no wonder this game has such dedicated fans and has exploded back into popularity again. It's so easy to just get sucked into doing a few quests, and then the next thing you know, you've put in like 4 hours just doing random shit. Nonetheless though, I'm so happy I gave this game another chance. It's even more insane how much of the game I have left to learn and explore. I'm not even close to the end game yet. Now, there's something I need to talk about, and that's the controversial DRM drama that has plagued Capcom recently. It sucks. I'm not for it at all, trust me. If you don't know anything about DRM or all the drama, go watch Mudahar's video on the situation. He gives it a lot more justice than I can. But anyway, I would be lying if I said I wasn't excited for Monster Hunter Wilds at this point. It looks insane. And even though Capcom has been shady as recently, they got some bangers lined up like Monster Hunter Wilds in 2025 and Dragon's Dogma 2 comes out in a few months. Just please figure it out, Capcom. Quit making this such a toxic relationship. Anyways though, you guys, I think it's a great place to call the video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.